Four?
Any changes to the agenda?
Nope.
Nope.
The only potential
Oh, yeah.
change that I talked to Brian about quickly was just Sam has put together an end of year report for the Plain District summary that we'd like to share under new business.
So no objections to that or any public comment? Nope. Acceptance of the minutes of the December meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And we'll get to staff report.
Hi, everybody. Happy 2025. So I got a bunch of things that I thought was worth highlighting at this particular meeting. I'll start with the Waitsfield Community Wastewater Project. Things are really humming along. There's a lot of work happening on the engineering design side and permitting, which includes the collection system design, pump station sizing, property owner discussions, things of that sort. A handful of things were completed in December, like field work, topographic surveying, wetlands, rare plants, cultural resources, and that work's being incorporated into design drawings right now. There's some geotechnical boring work that's been completed, and a wastewater loading test has also been completed. The wastewater loading test, which took place from September to December, essentially confirms the results, confirm the anticipated disposal capacity of the site, and that's being sent to DEC for their confirmation and moving that forward. So those are a lot of work, not a lot to show for it at this particular time. On the funding side of the project, for the USDA Rural Development, which is one of the primary funding sources, we finalized the application and the town's notice requirements. And the application is currently in final review by the state's program director, and when she fills out a couple pieces, it'll be sent to the national office for their review, which is anticipated to be relatively quick because the national office saw a version of it back in the summer. And so hoping, like, what relatively quick means in the DC office, I don't exactly know, but I'm thinking within a month's time, based on what I've heard. In addition, on USDA Rural Development, so that's like a funding application and anticipating an offer from USDA Rural Development for the project, which would be both a grant and loan. But we're also hosting, I set up a meeting with representatives from USDA Rural Development for a tour and info session next Wednesday. So there was essentially somebody in second high up as the state director previously, and a new person coming in USA Rural Development Office for Vermont, New Hampshire, and I'll be hosting them and trying to work on continuity between staff and ensure that they understand the elements of the project and just grab their ears. So really much looking forward to that next week. I've filled out a draft application for another funding source, the Vermont Community Development Program, for that project, which is in the range of about $1 million of request. The project is, I think I mentioned at the last meeting, was listed as number 2 on the 2025 Central Vermont Regional Project Priority List. And that list is held and sort of managed by the Central Vermont Economic Development Corporation and the Regional Planning Commission. And I had a meeting with Melissa Bounty of CVEDC about project funding strategies and things of that sort as next steps. One of the opportunities that being on that list provides increases the competitiveness of an application to the Northern Borders Regional Commission's Catalyst Program, up to $3 million for projects like this. And the 2025 round was just announced, and there's a training in February and a pre-application in February. So looking forward to essentially the next month or two is going to be focused a lot on grant applications and funding. Speaking of wastewater project, the town of Waitsfield, representatives from the town of Waitsfield, including myself, Josh Curtis on the select board, and JB Weir, planning and zoning office for town of Waitsfield, were invited to be part of the Vermont Village Water and Wastewater ARPA Resources Day. So there were 8 communities in the state that received funding through the Vermont Village Water and Wastewater ARPA program. We still received $2.5 million through that program. So they invited all 8 of those communities to a meeting, and had around 30 people there. About 2/3 were resources. And it was a really incredible day to essentially talk about these projects, identify barriers. So many funding and regulatory folks were there, and we had a lot of FaceTime and sort of like, it helped us understand where our project is in the pecking order. It provided access to like direct questions about funding and challenges, and it built a fair amount of connections across the different communities and sort of building a cohort of those of us that are working together. One of the takeaways that I had was Waitsfield's project is in kind of the upper tier. Is one of the top 2 projects that's of a larger scale that's pretty far along. So that was encouraging. And it opened up, like I said, a good number of dialogue about additional funding, and being able to identify where the gap is in the project and timing. And the day before, on January 2nd, Chach and I were on a very small WCAX segment, 2-minute segment about infrastructure upgrades related to housing. And I got the call 20 minutes beforehand and was like, "Can you come over and would you mind being interviewed?" And it was like an hour-long interview that got put into one little talking point for me, but it was great. And then and I'm happy to be able to support the town in situations like that. On the recreation side, I wanted to share conservation recreation visioning. That was one of the things that we put on the draft work plan for 2026 fiscal year for the planning district. And there were some sort of questions about what role we could play. Sam and I participated in a meeting in middle December with the CRV leadership team, the Conservation Recreation Visioning team, to learn about the project status and the potential for the planning district involvement. In some, they really would like the planning district to be involved. Exactly in what way, we don't know. Their primary funding is powering down at the end of March. They have some additional funding to go through the next year, and they're going through a process of setting priorities for that work, which will inform the structure of that work. And so what role we could play, we don't quite know yet. So Sam went to a follow-up meeting, and there's going to be another follow-up meeting at the end of this month that he'll be participating in. So bottom line is, we don't exactly know what the role is. We don't know if they're meeting quarterly or more regularly and what role we could play, but we are committed to be a part of that dialogue and figure that out. The transportation, the Vermont 100 Active Transportation Corridor Scoping Study, Sam has been supporting that project and doing a fair amount of field work and working with the consultants on that project, measuring things like distances to utility poles and other elements to help move that design forward. And we're also coordinating that project with the wastewater project to see is there co-location opportunities between those two. A second public meeting is anticipated in the middle of March for that project. Sugarbush Access Road Shared Use Path Segment 2, a grant application was submitted at the end of December through VTrans Transportation Alternatives Grant Program. So I'm looking forward to hear about that. But Segment 1 is in process, and this is for the next piece. The other thing on transportation, I wanted to mention the Mad Bus season. If you've seen the buses driving around, it's happening. Started on the 20th of December, goes to the end of March. We have bus mapping guides and flyers here, so feel free to grab them and share them around, and they've been posted and sent around. Most of the bus mapping guide information is digital these days, but we do have some copies. So feel free to grab and bring them wherever you think people might find them of interest. Another item that was in the potential to work on in the work plan of the next year related to Mad River Valley Flood and Climate Resilience Series, in a collaboration with Friends of the Mad River. In the aftermath of the July 10th, 2024 flooding, the rainfall event and the related impacts, the Plain District and Friends of the Mad River had a collaborative event focusing on a community event in mid-October, learning about river dynamics. And the second one is being planned for the spring, which is going to focus a little bit more on neighboring towns in the Winooski watershed and the experiences and sort of next steps that they've done, so we can learn from them, like Montpelier and Waterbury. So that's in progress. And looking ahead, we're looking to continue that effort and have a series of events, maybe not, like maybe quarterly or 2 times a year. We're not quite sure yet, but Friends has applied for funding support for the Lake Champlain Basin Program. I provided a letter of support on behalf of the planning district to support that effort. Municipal things, I was really fortunate yesterday to attend an event called Navigating Funding in the Post-Pandemic World. This was a winter conference of the Vermont Community Development Association. And it was looking at funding sources and opportunities to access and sort of what are the challenges and opportunities that are out there. But a little less than 100 people were in attendance. It took place in the city of St. Albans. It was great. But one of my biggest takeaways that I think is just worth sharing is the transformation that's happened in the city of St. Albans in the past 15 years, in the sort of investment in the leadership role that the city has played. It was really happening, and it was different than the last time I remember being in the city of St. Albans. They've issued over $20 million in bonds and generated over $60 million in new taxable properties. In the past 15 years, public financing has created partnerships with developers on at least 3 projects that have produced about just shy of 200 units of housing. They've been using things like TIF, tax increment financing, local options taxes, creative financing, things like that, and creating partnerships with developers. And it was really inspiring to see a municipality taking that role of leadership and sort of entrepreneurship approach. They have a new 88-room downtown hotel, a new municipal parking garage, a $5 million public pool facility in collaboration with the town, and they finished a 3-year streetscape improvement project. So it was one of the opportunities of going to events like this is to sort of learn how other communities are doing things, and it was pretty inspiring.
You also shouldn't ignore the amount of federal investment.
Correct, which is
money has gone into that town in a big way.
In a big way, and they have been a recipient of a lot of federal money, and the CDS, Congressional Discretionary Spending, and a variety of other earmarks and funding. But it's also impressive how that has had a multiplier effect in the community.
But you're right, they've got a really good city manager, and they've had great mayors.
Yeah,
a lot of leadership.
Yeah. So it's a great team. So I think Dominic Cloud's been there for about 15 years or so. He used to be at the League of Cities and Towns. So it'd been a while since I had kind of been there with my eyes open to sort of see what's going on, and it was inspiring. One of the things I did learn was that the state is poised to receive about $68 million in community development block grant disaster relief funds, and that was news to me, which is really, really great and positive. That'll take some time to cycle through, and the state has to put together kind of an intended use plan on how they plan on spending it, and I'm looking forward to being abreast of how that process goes on, and seeing how our projects in the community broadly can take advantage of that. So that was the biggest funding news that I heard while I was there. And then the last thing I wanted to chat about was the UVM Medical Center service cuts. On January 8th, a letter of concern from the 3 town select boards in the planning district was sent, and in advance of that, and after I spoke with the Director of Communications and Engagement at the Health Network, CVMC, and talked through sort of what we were doing, why we were doing it, and included an invitation to attend future planning district steering committee meeting, this one or the next one. And you know, it was interesting. It was a great conversation with Jay. And one of the things he said was, he was like, well, we have been communicating. And I was like, well, this is an opportunity to have a forum that's a little bit more direct to the community concerns. And I think that the Health Center Board is one thing, and it's a different relationship too, because that's a landlord relationship in addition to other things. And writing things to the newspaper is great, but that's kind of like one-sided communication. So the potential to have a dialogue in that. So we received a reply at the end of the day yesterday from Jay, and that went to the primary CC list. We blind CC'd the full steering committee, but the CC list has, so Sam has a copy of it, and there's just a handful of things that I picked up on that I thought was worth sharing. We have new ink in the mail. No, I'm good. But a couple of things highlighted in the letter. Green Mountain Care Board budget orders to reduce revenue by $16.2 million. The Matter Valley Family Medicine practice is the smallest across all of CVMC and UVM Medical Center. Primary care locations in both panel size, number of patients, and square footage. There's limited opportunity for growth at the location or the number of patients. The site has the greatest financial loss per patient visit. 30% of the patients seen at the practice lived outside of the valley and passed another CVMC primary care location, a great way to visit.
That was interesting.
That was interesting.
Yeah.
That was their research more recently. The waiting list for the Mad River office is about 315 people. And they say that if the 3 providers and staff were to move to their Waterbury location, they'd be able to immediately eliminate that list and further expand access for patients who are waiting. That they're committed to expanding telemedicine. And in the coming days, Jay will be reaching out to the chairs of the select boards to gauge interest in organizing a conversation to address any additional questions.
I did receive a letter very similar to this, addressed just to me as chair of the Basin Select Board.
Okay,
Just so you know that.
good.
Yeah,
Great.
so I'm assuming that Luke and Christine and Brian, I don't know if you got one as well.
I have not
Okay.
checked if I did.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of where it stands at this particular point. We did, you know, there's one small change into the original letter that we sent after talking to Jay originally, and I said, hey, I want to give you a heads up. We're about to send a letter. It identifies 3 things, essentially what the letter says, but really short. And I chatted with him, and he suggested changing, in addition to the president, CEO of the medical center, the second person, which was really the CVMC, he suggested changing that to somebody else. And he said he thought it would land better. So that was the only amendment we made to the letter. But it's been great to have that line of communication directly to the communications director. But anyway, this is where things stand at this time.
Do you feel like it landed better?
Yeah. I do.
I mean, this is the first time that they'd ever actually
They have actually responded.
explained anything.
Yeah.
With data.
Right. And so, yeah, I mean, like I said, the way I explained it to Jay is I was like, this is the opportunity to have a healthy conversation with the community. Which really focused it that way, and I truly believe that, because originally his response was, well, we've already communicated all sorts of things. We told a lot of people, and I was like, well, I should tell you, we originally wrote the letter November 22nd. I'm talking to him in the beginning of January. Things have transpired during that time, but having that, there's a difference between the ways they've communicated in the past and the opportunity of talking to the towns and the planning district chairs, and that broader audience.
Do you think they're going to take us up on that or not?
Of having,
Actually having a face-to-face meeting?
maybe not a steering committee meeting. I'd be surprised if they, but what Jay had said, well, I do think that he'll follow up with the chairs and have that discussion. Exactly what kind of meeting that is and such, if it's a broad public meeting or something
I think one of the
smaller.
concerns is they're continuing not to share financial details. I mean, they're claiming that the financial issues are pertinent to the open discussion, but they're not sharing what those are, and therefore it's difficult to have a dialogue on how those can be addressed without those numbers on the table. So I would think that would be important in any follow-up discussion. I know the board of the health center of similar frustration and I think unable to get some data.
Mhm.
I also noticed that just, I believe, today, Dr. Sunny Eaton did a posting on Instagram, which I actually watched right through before I came. And it talks about, we're driven by the belief that regardless of what happens to the world, we all deserve equitable access to healthcare. And in the details, he also says, close to where we live, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a very interesting Instagram post.
And specific in this context.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I thought you were gonna say he was, in Vales or Aspen skiing, telling you.
He may be
That's a
too.
better story.
But it certainly is interesting contrast to the messaging they're putting out here, so.
So any questions about anything or dialogue about anything that I've either shared or didn't share that's in the staff report? I'm happy to discuss.
I guess I just had one question about the wastewater. Presumably, the various discussions in terms of the various funding sources is not impacting the schedule for that project, is that correct?
Yeah, we're still online for, there is enough there's funding secured at this point to start construction in 2026. The ability to go through the entirety of the project is dependent on funding. So I think the timetable for construction in 2026, I don't see any reason why that wouldn't continue. But the scale of that first phase of the project, I think, is dependent on the funding. So that's in process.
Thanks.
Hey Josh, I had a question. Margot submitted to us the plans for the sidewalk up on the access road. I know that 10 foot is optimal as far as the width of that path. Is there any possibility, without precluding federal funding or whatever help we get to make that, narrow that up? It's just a 14-foot right away seems to make the project infinitely more expensive. Even if you shrunk it to 8 feet and 12-foot right away or something, it just seems that in some areas where with a 10-foot path that's almost a single lane road next to the road, and I'm just not sure. And I understand if that's what the federal transportation requirements are, but to me that's more akin of a recreation path than a transportation or a sidewalk type.
Yeah, so Jim, this is Sam Robinson here. I work with Josh. I'm the community planner. So as far as I'm aware, it's not a stipulation to be 10 feet wide to receive the federal funding. But at the public meeting back in November, this question was raised as well. And the discussion kind of surrounded just that 10-foot being kind of like the gold standard for safety, especially when you're considering if it is like a shared use path where there's going to be bikers, runners, possibly, elderly folks, maybe some kids. If you're going to have two-way traffic going at potentially high speeds biking, 10-foot is kind of the gold standards as far as safety goes. 8-foot is passable, but really anything less than 8 foot wouldn't really be an option. So it was something they considered, but they opted with 10 just because the right of way in that area is relatively large. I think it's 3-rod right of way. So they thought they could get away with it, and it's kind of better from a safety standpoint. So that's why they chose that. I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, it does. It's just there's some areas that we have one building that's hardly 14 feet off the road. So and that's where I think it crosses. I can't remember if it crosses before Paradise or right after, but and then the slope adjacent to the admin building where there's a retaining wall. I mean, obviously the less of the slope you have to cut, the less height the retaining wall is, the less expensive it would be. And then obviously the admin parking lot
Yeah, I can, I'd be happy to, have you seen the conceptual design plans yet?
Yeah, I went through it on Monday and went over it with Margot, and I guess that, you know, I'm not as concerned about losing parking spots and admin as just, you know, the overall width of the thing and it becoming a vehicle lane versus a bike lane. It's 10 feet's pretty wide.
Well, I could definitely chat with VHB and just bring this concern to them. Regarding the retaining wall, I think. I'm trying to remember the conceptual design plans. I think it's actually on the other side of the road in that area. But I can bring up this chat that we
Okay,
had.
yeah, and I might be wrong. I just remember seeing one at one point on a slope. So
Mhm.
it's, you know, if you're notching out, regardless of where it is, um, you know, when you have
Gotcha.
14 feet versus say if you had an 8, so you'd have a 10-foot, you know, right away, which would, you know, bring the thing in 4 feet. So
Mhm. Yeah, I think there could be opportunity, like on a case by case basis, if it needed to be more narrow, I think that could be an option. And it's
And I
something,
totally see that point of view if it's something like this, you know, the Stowe path where it's a recreational path versus a, you know, a safe way to go up and down the road type situation. Versus, you know, I understand what they're doing in Waitsfield too with the sidewalks, but
Mhm.
10 feet just seems a lot of sidewalk to plow as well.
Yeah. Well, I'll mention that we talked about this tonight. Unfortunately, we just had our most recent meeting this Monday and I actually missed it because I was sick. But there's gonna be another meeting, I think, on February 7th, but I'm sure I'll chat with them before then too, so I can mention that we talked about that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
You all set?
Yep.
So at our December meeting, we reviewed a draft work plan and associated budget and acted on the budget side of things, still had some loose ends on the work plan and never adopted that. So Josh, you wanna turn it back to you on
Yeah.
what changes have been made?
Yep, quickly gonna share. This here, so included in the additional documents on the website for this meeting was a copy of the draft. It is essentially the same as the last one that we had. The only difference with the work plan, as I brought up through the staff report, is the inclusion of 2 of the items that were in the explore category. So that is the Friends Bad River Collaboration, Response, Rebuild, and Resilience Efforts, and Conservation Recreation Visioning 2.0. Exactly what the role is for the CRV 2.0 TBD. And we're engaged in that and committed to be engaged in that. But it is the same otherwise of what was there before. So and the things that we talked about previously. So I'm happy to talk about any of those or what have you.
I'd only say that it's the conservation recreation visioning, but you have it under conservation.
Man, I fix it in 3 places in advance of this meeting. And what I did is I copied and pasted it and put it up there.
I could find myself.
It is correct in the staff report. That I can guarantee.
And I did notice the staff report, you fewer
Acronyms?
acronyms.
Yes, I spelled things out specifically for Paul, and he's not here, so I'm quite sad that he missed this meeting, because it was, that was top of mind.
So are there any discussion about the work plan? We did talk about it in a fair amount of detail in
Mhm.
December.
And as I recollect, you said at the last meeting, Joshua, you didn't think it was valuable to try and divvy this up by hours because it just got
Yeah,
too much into the weeds, right?
yeah, I feel like this is useful given their track record and staff's time, I think.
Yeah,
it's
I've
good to know
thought
there.
that exercise in the past was probably not worth the effort.
I mean, it was, at times it was useful, but.
Just to figure out what to cut.
Yeah, exactly, right, would end up being like 200% of
Yeah.
time, that was really important, but. And as we've discussed, a lot of these things fit in more than one category. The categories are really for the sake of just making it easier. And it's but there are ways to split hairs here, but I don't think that that's worth it. But the real question is, ensuring that we have, buy-in on the work plan items.
I will, I guess, Jim, and I don't recall if Jonathan was here in December, just to make sure if you guys have any questions or comments.
I don't.
No, nothing for me. I wasn't here in December, but didn't have anything further. Thanks.
With that, unless there's any discussion, why don't we make a motion and adopt it?
I'll make that motion.
A second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Great. And then another piece of unfinished business, I will turn it over to Dan to talk about the planning district's code of conduct and conflict of interest, which grew out of our bylaws, which we referenced having a conflict of interest policy, but we didn't have one, and went through a process of wondering whether the new requirement for municipalities to have a conflict of interest policies apply to the planning district. Found that it doesn't, but the same principles would apply to any policy we'd come up with. And what was the committee who was mainly turned out to be you, Dan?
Well, it's sort of I think it's called sort of governance.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you wanna?
yeah, I'm not sure there's that much to say about it, Brian. I hope everyone's had a chance to look at it. It was really, adopted from the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commissions and with the help of Brian and Chuck. And staff, of course, we fixed it, so it's fixed it, I mean, made it, changed references to CVRPC to the map of a planning district and fit it to our needs. It applies to staff, it applies to steering committee members. The applicability is, I don't know if it's worth going through. It's short. I'm happy to go. Maybe the best thing is if anyone has any questions. I'm
Yeah,
happy
because
to-
we have had this in front of us more than one occasion.
Yeah,
So-
this
So
at least,
rather-
this version, I think it's the third time that this has been
Okay.
in part of the packet.
So rather than walking through it, if anyone has any questions, happy to address them, but if not, I'm hoping we can just vote on it and accept it.
Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, no questions here.
And the intent is, once it's accepted, then each member then signs it and acknowledges it.
Yeah.
Which is pretty, in the nonprofit world, that's also pretty common practice.
Yeah.
Very similar types of policies for board members.
Yeah,
Well, I'll entertain a motion.
so move.
Second,
Second from Dan?
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Aye.
And then, do you want to talk about the year-end review now before we go into new business, or maybe that is new business?
Yeah, that would be new business.
Why don't we stay with the governance stuff and
Yep.
then we'll go to
Sounds great.
Sam. We have talked about the need to update our personnel policies
Yes.
or create personnel
Create,
policies.
and I have not made, any progress yet, but now that we have, Josh has provided me with a number of forms. Now that we've, adopted the code of conduct and conflict of interest, I feel comfortable turning my attention to that, and, my intention is to, in the next week or two, put a draft together and circulate it to executive committee members, and then, once folks are happy, then bring it to the full board to discuss.
Great.
Et cetera.
Yeah, and just quickly, that like the status is, the personal policies that we have now is the ones that existed when I started in 2008. I think it was dated 2007, 2008, and it was at a time when Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission was playing an administrative function for the planning district. So it reflects that in those personnel policies, and it's well, it's been a while since that. It's been almost 20 years since that was written, and a fair number of things have changed both in our operations as well as the world of personnel policies. So ensuring that it's up to date and it reflects the things that are happening and the things that the steering committee and the broader planning district want to have happen, I think is great. So thank you, Dan, for.
Sure, and, yeah, I'll get on that now that it's the next in the queue.
Thanks. Sam, your review?
Sounds good. I'm just gonna share it on the screen here so we can take a look at the visual, but long story short, the original intent was, so I've been working on this over like last week into this week. My intent was to have it finished by like Friday or Monday and then send it out in advance with the rest of the materials. But then this is my first day in the office this week because I got sick Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I just wanted to put this up here and give a little explanation as to why we did it this year. And also let you know that I'll be sending it out and accepting feedback over like the next couple weeks if you have any thoughts or suggestions. But last year around this time, we had kind of a discussion about similarly around the budgeting time of year. How do we express the value of the planning district to the community? A lot of people, myself included, before I had this job, I wasn't really aware of the planning district. I didn't really know much about what it did. So just trying to cast a wider net and let people know that there is a planning district. We work with the towns and we're working on all sorts of cool and interesting projects to help the valley. So around that time, we thought about ways we could kind of facilitate that, and doing a year in review is one of those. So last year we came up with a year in review that was different than our typical annual report, had some photos, some colors, and just told a bit more of a story that hopefully could reach a larger audience. So this is our second time doing that this year. Very similar format to last year's. I just took some time to highlight a couple of the projects that we worked on last year. So we have a table of contents that lists some of the projects that are highlighted: the Waitsfield Community Wastewater Project, Vermont 100 Active Transportation Corridor, etc. It doesn't include everything that we worked on, but the idea is just kind of highlight a couple of the big projects that we're involved in, and also shed some light on some other things such as, our history, also how we can bring value to the community through leveraging grants, things of that nature, to kind of illustrate that we provide value to the community, both in like a professional services sense, but we are also able to leverage some unique grant opportunities that can benefit the valley. So this will be coming your way. I sent it to Josh earlier and he might want to take a look at it, but maybe by tomorrow or early next week, I'll send it out for everyone to take a look at, and happy to entertain any additions or changes, removals, whatever you guys think.
So great to see that total grant dollar, that big number there. It's really nice.
Yeah, it was a big year.
Yeah. And then just getting this information out under people's noses, right, and giving them the opportunity to see it and be able to tell the story. And kudos to Sam for the layout and the structure of it, and a lot of the content. So we don't have a lot of money in our budget for this year for printing, so we'd like to print a couple copies, but we're not gonna be able to do it. It's pretty expensive. It's like 30 pages or so. But I think it is important to have a couple copies for steering committee members, for towns, and for town meeting day, to have in the back of the room kind of thing. So that's our goal.
I just had a thought that it might be worthwhile just to build on the objective here, which is to demonstrate the importance of the MRVPD. To have somewhere in the report a short note from each of the select board chairs to say how valuable the planning district has been to the work of each of the towns over the last year, something like that. If that's agreeable to the representatives from the towns, I think that might help get the message out. This is not an organization working in isolation. This is an organization here being a key part of how the select boards can get additional help. And planning commissions as well, perhaps both could be useful, just to add just a line to say, hey, it's been pretty just a
I
thought.
wonder if doing a bunch of like pull quotes throughout,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and
that would be
maybe
good.
Eric as well.
Yeah.
in The business community.
Yeah,
And I wouldn't limit it just to select boards. I mean, the planning commissioners,
Yeah.
chairs should also.
Yeah.
could weigh in, that's a good idea.
in Sugarbush. I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I like that idea, and maybe Sam can send out sort of a solicitation of quotes and from folks, and we can pepper it throughout the
Yeah.
product.
Definitely.
That's a great
I think
idea.
that's a great
Yeah.
idea. Thanks, Peter.
Can I, I'm gonna jump, it's related to this, jump back to the work plan. What do you have in, I've been involved in some of the discussions, but I was curious if you've given any more thought to the 40th anniversary. And I was thinking of this, I mean, this is our 39th annual report.
Right.
I'm wondering if there's a tie between the two.
Yeah, it's,
I don't have anything. We discussed possibly talking about that tonight because I don't really have an answer,
Yeah.
but I figured
right.
coming up with one together would be good. So I haven't put too much thought to it, to be honest, yet.
Yeah, so with it being on that 40th, we did have an initial conversation about including that as part of a theme throughout that document or highlighting it there. And also just having a broader conversation with the steering committee about what are the opportunities to highlight that. And I don't know, like we can come up with things, or if there are one or two people or the executive committee who kind of would like to be the incubator of ways to highlight the 40th anniversary, but yeah.
What were you thinking about? Were you thinking like a tri-town meeting of some sort?
I wasn't beyond
Okay.
just asking a question at this point.
Okay, I think it's a great
But
question.
it is tied in the work plan to Tri-Town Leadership Meeting / 40th anniversary.
Yeah,
So I just think there should be some celebration.
Mm-hmm.
right.
And doing it in a way that brings the different,
Did you say you put a small amount in the budget?
Yeah.
yes.
So got
Yeah.
some funds for some sort of, whether it's a small event or like something else.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of ideas in my head. I've thought about this a fair amount, and specifically thinking like having an event or having some lead up things to it and some messaging around highlighting the work that our broader community has done in these 40 years, and the accomplishments and the things that have been leveraged through that time, and tell that story. Exactly what form that storytelling takes and so on and so forth, I haven't gone too far down that road yet, but I think either we can make it an agenda item as the steering committee, or a smaller group, maybe myself and Sam and one or two people, if we want to sort of come up with a kernel of an idea, and then share some of that at a steering committee meeting. I'd love that.
Maybe, well, can I throw this out there as an idea? Maybe there's some people who are fun, who want to be like a party planning subcommittee, who would take that on, and help you with staff. I mean, I love the idea of the executive committee being involved in stuff, but, I think why not, why not let people, if there's interest.
Yeah.
From other members, why not, let them
I agree.
let them run with, let them
Yeah.
run with it.
You're basically saying we're not fun.
I'm not fun, that's for sure. I'm not fun.
He just disproved that whole
Is there a motion for a party planning committee? And anybody wants to be a
So
part of that?
maybe just put some feelers out. And
Yeah.
we could put it on the February agenda. if we
Yeah.
wanna See if who might wanna weigh in.
I thought in terms of the celebration, I'm not quite sure what might be involved from a budget point of view, would be if we could have somebody local do a 10-minute video.
Mhm.
Because that would get a lot of legs if we could circulate that out on social media and websites and so on.
Mhm.
People would watch a media like that more than they'll flip through something that's print.
Mhm. Yeah,
And if it's a tri-town meeting, maybe the three towns could kick in for venues, the cost. A
yeah.
little bit, something like that.
Great.
What season are we thinking about doing this in, or timing?
Not right now. So
Yeah. Late summer or fall.
Late summer, fall, so possibly an
Oh,
outdoor
sorry.
venue that's been generous to us in the past might be willing to,
Yeah,
um,
just maybe. Yeah,
maybe,
right. Like in the September timeframe. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we give ourselves enough of a runway, I think we can pull something off. And I've, I've thought about interviewing past members of the steering committee and folks who have been involved. And, one of the things I inherited in the website in 2008 was this like summary of planning district work that was written specifically by directors. So it was like, Brian Shoup, here's a window of time, and here are objective and things that have happened during that time. And so, that's one way to look at the history is under directors, but really by decade or period of time. And it's not just accomplishments, but I think it's more than accomplishments of the planning district. I think it's accomplishments of the community and how the community has evolved and worked together and has enhanced its identity and strengths and collaboration. To me, those are the types of themes that I think are really,
Right.
to me, that's the direction I'd like to go.
Yeah, I think back and I think the success of the planning district really smoothed the creation of the recreation district. It was just kind of a no-brainer. It wasn't that controversial at all.
Right. Great, thank you, Brian.
So are we done with new business?
That's pretty much all I had on the annual report. Kind of a notice it'd be coming your way. A little bit of background.
I did say in an email to Josh just before the meeting, when he mentioned this item, that I'm pretty beat and it would be nice to wrap up a little early
Yes.
tonight, so I feel good about that.
Well, you're welcome.
Happy to oblige.
Do you want to start with the member roundtable?
Yeah.
Why don't we start with the screen, Jim? Or
Sorry, I'm used to the mandatory teams that we're on all the time. I don't really have anything for this month.
snow's been good.
Yeah, we're you're looking for an update on the mountain?
That'd be good. Yeah.
All right. Christmas week was pretty much what we expected. Altera's been blacking out or putting restrictions on the base pass, so most of that week was restricted. So in the last couple of years, our holiday periods have seen less visitation than in the past. So that also leads to busier weekends when we don't have restrictions, like last weekend where we had our busiest first week after New Year's in a very long time. This weekend coming into Martin Luther King, we have 2 holiday or restricted days, Saturday and Sunday, though Monday is not. So we'll see how that pans out. Occupancy on the mountain has been good. We've picked up a lot in the last 2 weeks. Obviously, the snow helps with that. Some projects that we have teed up right now, we're going to be replacing Tommy's Toy over at Mount Ellen with a surface lift this summer. We submitted to the town of Facein. Hopefully that's come across some people's desks. The zoning permit for that. And we're going to Act 250 on that, as well as wrapping up the Heaven's Gate project next summer. And we've started the paperwork on permitting the North Ridge Express over at Mount Ellen, which is probably going to be not this summer, but the summer after. So that's where the mountain's at.
Jim, I do have a question. Can you give us any updates on some of the lift problems that are happening at Mount Ellen at the moment? I know you've had some downtime.
Well, Northridge has been one of them. I don't know if you're aware, but that was the original GMX lift. We moved up. It's old. Parts are hard to come by. We did get behind the ball on lift inspections with installing the new lift this year. We hope to have Castle Rock at South up and running, or actually inspected tomorrow. So it'll be up and running this weekend. And that leaves us only Slide Brook, which won't be running until we get that inspected. But everything else should be, if it's operating, running 100% this weekend.
Fine.
So, like everyone, our lift mechanics are hard to come by, and we try to hire everyone we can. And if anyone's interested in becoming a lift mechanic, please give us a call and we'll put you right to work.
Great. Jonathan?
So since my last appearance in November, the one major update that I have to share is that our consultant for our Irisville master planning project has started to put together very high level conceptual drawings for us to look at, and we are anticipating getting much more information next Tuesday, I believe, is our next meeting with them. So we should be getting more detail on how that's going to start shaping up very soon. We've also, our steering committee and particularly JB have been having discussions with landowners in the Irisville area, and also with the some potential new buyers of the Cross Point property, the Shaws, that have been very promising. So we are optimistic that we'll be able to have some exciting news coming out of these next meetings, leading into another public meeting, following up on our dot planning meeting at the end of last year. So there's no like publicly available drawings or anything yet, but we're happy with the project progress that was made. They presented some very high level initial drawings to just the sort of leadership of the steering committee in December, just to ensure that they were sort of directionally moving in the way that we wanted. And we're expecting to see significantly more detailed materials on Tuesday. And the only other thing that the Planning Commission has really done in between November and now is we have moved forward on the process of adopting a groundwater protection overlay district for the town's municipal water supply. It's not fully through the Planning Commission yet, but we have warned our meeting, I believe it's the 18th of February is our meeting where we will be having the public hearing on that. And then assuming all goes well, that'll go on to the select board thereafter. And I think that would tee it up for adoption sometime in the sort of late March to April timeframe.
Great. Any questions? Chuck?
Nope.
Going with the face and select board?
Well, I thought all I was gonna talk about is we're chin deep in budgeting for this year, but I don't know if any of you read the Valley Reporter today, front page.
I didn't have a chance to read it yet.
Yeah, we're gonna get stock for school taxes, right?
Yeah. So as it turned out, Lisa Loomis is the one that got them started. She was either at or viewed a Harwood board meeting, and at the board meeting, they were presenting certified levels of appraisal and tax rates for the upcoming year. And in this one particular slide, it showed that most, if not all, of the Valley towns' tax rates, education tax rates, it should be clear, are going down, except for Faceins, that's going up 10%. So she did a little more research, interviewed some folks at Harwood, and it turns out that it's a math problem, as she put it. It's essentially our CLA went from 71 to 72%. Down to 54%. And that just drove our tax rate up, or it looks like it's going to for this year. So this just came out today. I've only received one email on it so far. I'm sure there's more to come.
Wait for tomorrow.
Yeah, or when I get home tonight. But it doesn't appear that there's much of anything that we can do about it. Doug Mosley, who's our chief lister, I went back and looked at all of the properties that sold over the last 3 years, and that's the time frame that they look at. And he submitted any of the anomalies into the state that they normally will pull out. So it looks like the data that they are working with is accurate. So I don't know that there's anything anybody can do about that, or the accuracy of what's being presented, because this is all coming from Harwood, not the state. So this is their best guess at what everything is gonna be looking like. But it's enough to trigger everybody with everything else we're talking about that's going on, the closing of the health center and, no pharmacy in town, and now here we go with the tax rate increase of another 10% above the 14 or 17% that we got this past year. So it's not a pretty picture, if it's true. And, I guess more to come on that. I think we're gonna be busy talking about, if not dealing with that kind of stuff.
The good news for the other towns, it looked like Waitsfield, Waterbury and Warren have a very small decrease.
Yes,
But at least it's not an increase.
Yeah.
So.
yeah,
Thank it.
we're paying for you guys.
Thank you, thank you so much,
appreciate
very generous.
But it's a function of, high property, sales, and in some cases, I looked at the list, properties were selling for double what their assessed value was, and that's what knocks the whole CLA picture,
Right.
out of whack, so.
Do you guys have a reappraisal in the works?
Well, so yes, so we sent out bids, 6 or 8 months ago, got no responses. We sent them out again, we got 1 response, so we decided to go with this particular company. But they can't begin until 27 or 28,
Yeah.
and it'll take them a year and a half at least to do the appraisal. So we're talking late 28, 29 before we'll have new appraised properties. So, I don't know what we do in the interim. And I guess that's some of the questions that are gonna have to be asked as we go forward here. So.
So if anybody's an appraiser and a lift mechanic, you're in demand.
We get it all covered.
Yeah, they can afford to live here.
Well, there's
Yeah.
that.
And it's a real difficult situation. So, I mean, we know about Facein now, but I'm sure there are other towns in Vermont that are gonna go through the same thing.
Right.
And there's such a lack of appraisers. I don't know if you've.
We haven't put out our RFP yesterday, but I did talk just yesterday with our assessor, Spencer Potter, who said that what he's been hearing is 28, 29 some
Yeah.
towns are. Although I talked to my wife who just left a position in the town of Bristol, she said they had 4 proposals and the one that they hired can start this March. So I need to find out what they did and who they are.
Yeah,
I'm gonna do that.
yeah,
I was shocked.
because most every town in the state is facing the same thing we're
Yeah.
facing. So there just aren't enough appraisers to do it all.
Well, I guess it was last year, the state did seriously talk about consolidating the, property tax assessment.
Yeah,
I don't know, I haven't really thought through the implications of that. My
Yeah.
first thought was, they can have it,
exactly.
so I don't know.
Yeah, it does seem like, as you guys are talking about, like another sort of impossible ask of little towns.
Yeah.
And it just seems like the number of impossible asks or costly asks are piling up,
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's my report.
Yeah,
boy, that's a tough one.
Peter?
A couple of things, just to give you an update on Eric, his course of treatment is now complete. He's staying down in the Cape for probably another 2 or 3 weeks just to regain his strength. He's keeping in touch, but, he's has to take it easy. But, he's hoping to be back in the valley probably sometime in February, so that's all good news. In other news, as I think you may be aware, the chamber started a marketing initiative to try and relook at how to build a whole marketing plan for the businesses and the community members of the chamber. So the first meeting with a consultant that's been hired to do that was this Tuesday, and basically started to give us the businesses and the community education on both marketing and collaboration. So the focus is how we can, make 1 and 1 equal 3 or 4 by collaborating more effectively. So it was a good kickoff meeting. There was only about a dozen or 15 people at that meeting, but the hope is to hopefully get some momentum and basically improve the overall efficiency of how we operate as businesses in the valley. So we'll see where that goes. But I think it's a good initiative by the chamber to bring in some professional help with experience in community marketing, as in building marketing within a community. So we'll see where that goes.
Dan, you ready to go?
Let's see, probably three things. Land use and development regs, we are. I think I told you, we we forgot to do the statutory report, and are waiting, we've asked the consultant to do it, so we're sort of kicked back the timing of the public meeting. We're really hoping to get it done before town meeting, you know.
Who's your consultant?
It was Brandy Saxton, but
Yeah.
she moved to New Zealand,
Yeah.
and then Sharon Murray came
Is she
in.
still doing it?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, but I think she's quite backed up, and so we're rather impatient to get that report from her. If she can't do it in time away, I guess I'll just have to take a crack at it, but I think it would be better if she did. The second item is, you know, the town, work on the town plan is sort of imminent now, so we're gonna take that up. And the last item, and this maybe speaks to my need to improve communication with the select board. But at our last planning commission meeting, to my shock, I discovered that, this is embarrassing to say, but that the select board had, was really moving forward with the short-term rental, ordinance and had sent a check off to Granicus. So I learned that on Monday. I guess they were thinking that they need to move forward with Granicus, you know, they allocated the budget and.
Granicus.
Granicus is one of those, it's one of those software companies that provides short-term rental data analysis, you know, scrapes the websites and the planning commission. Joshua and Sam were instrumental in sort of vetting the various companies offering these kind of services that will help us really automate a registration process. And then essentially help us pick up who is listing their place for
Yep.
rental, but not registering, and then an automated process for sending them out letters. So, yeah, bad communication, but pretty damn exciting, if I may use that word. In that, you know, it's been a long and somewhat painful process. I think the select board made I know the select board made some changes to the planning commission's draft, but it looks like we're moving forward.
Nice.
And the point person is Rebecca Campbell, our I think she's our town administrator. Yeah, we had our kickoff, a very brief kickoff meeting. I did mention Sam, Granicus asked us if there were gonna be any other sort of players who might be involved. And I said I anticipated that you would be one, particularly focusing on this question of what of the short-term rental unit population, can we identify those that used to be in
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah.
sort of longer-term residential space that have been converted to short-term rentals? The other sort of nice feature is I'm feeling like sort of culturally on the planning commission, everybody seems to be like, yeah, this is really important. And I wasn't sure if the select board felt that way, but they seem to have felt so too.
Great.
So, yeah, really excited. I mean, I have to say, after you've probably heard me complaining and gnashing my teeth, like, when are we gonna do something?
Progress.
Yeah, progress.
That's great.
So sorry for a lengthy
No,
report,
that's
but.
great.
Oh, and the last item is, Joshua and Sam are coming to our planning commission to talk about housing and potentially this, you know, whether this, can we make the town garage site? You know, we haven't actually boots on the ground, can we do it? Now, we have two architects on the planning commission who are optimistic that you could put something there. So anyway, we're really excited to have Joshua and Sam come on the 27th of January to talk to us about the steps we have to follow. And I know I've talked about this before, but we welcome participation from other planning commissions or for really of anyone who's interested. So thank you and looking forward to it.
Here too.
Well, we're in the middle of budget. I hope to wrap it up mostly on Monday. Things are looking good. My report has been the same since April. We still don't have a town administrator. We did have somebody from out of town who is very interested in the job, very excited about the opportunity. By circumstance, he happened to go to college with Josh. they didn't know each other, that he was here or anything like that, right?
Yeah,
Or you
no.
weren't buddies with him, but you just knew him.
No, in our school, the undergrad school that I went to had 550 people. He was a year behind me in total, not just in a class, but total at the school. So he and I talked for about 10 minutes before we realized that we were at the same small school at the exact same time. And I hadn't heard his name or otherwise until I ran into him. So small.
So
world.
we're hopeful, but we are developing a plan B if that doesn't work, that we will consider kind of refining the position and making it more of a not as senior a position and try to get somebody who might be able to grow into a town administrator position. So that's all, that's the most important stuff other than the wastewater work that's going on and the Irisville planning.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we need to cover?
No. This might be a record.
Yeah,
So it's definitely a record on Brian's time as being the chair, but like, this might be a record. As far as I know.
that's great. All right, well.
Good precedent, short meetings.
There you
May I
go.
move? That
Yes.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Is there a second? Aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Well done.